After breakfast on the seashore, Jesus set about to restore Peter's love that he would henceforth not trust himself. He committed some big failures, 3 times denying the Savior, then leading others to waver. Yet Jesus said, "Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Shepherd my sheep. Do you love me? Then give my sheep something to eat." We, like Peter, all have stumbled. Such defeats make our strength crumble. Our once proud hearts become humble. We are so low. In these moments the Lord comes in, seeking our love and affection. As we listen, we can hear him saying to us, "Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Shepherd my sheep. Do love me? Then give my sheep something to eat." In these days the Lord is hindered because of a lack of shepherds who dispense the milk of the word to the lost sheep. He needs man's cooperation to let him shepherd from within. Will you be one who is open and say to him, "Lord, I love you. I'll feed your lambs. Lord, I love you. I'll shepherd your sheep. Lord, I love you. I'll give your sheep something to eat."
Once again, we welcome you here to our in-person service at the International Community of Christians, the Christian International Community. And we hope that all of you are blessed by these services, especially those who are listening to us through the internet and are not able to be with us here today, but so many of you are, and we are so thankful for that. Today we have a message to share with you that's the second in a series that we are engaged in right now on learning how we can become evangelists in this world, spreading this word of love to the world that needs it so badly. How can we do that? Last week I shared with you a message about enabling people to see Christ in us. And we talked about how, first of all, we have to have Christ in us. If we don't have Christ in us, it's going to be sort of hard for people to see Christ in us. So we have to have that personal experience and be changed and transformed inwardly, maybe a little, maybe a lot, but nonetheless we know what it's like to be on the road toward transforming into the shepherd that we were meant to be. And we need to be able to show that to people. And when we show that to people, they see that Christ is real because we are real, and they begin to be interested in what that life might offer them. Well, today we're going to move on to another way in which we can become evangelists in the world, and that way is by feeding others for Christ, or on behalf of Christ, which is another way of saying that we become the shepherds of others in the world. We become those who feed the sheep what they need. And this is the understanding that we've had in Christianity from the very beginning of time. But the problem is we haven't quite understood what that really means to feed my sheep. And also, we haven't quite understood what we are to be feeding the sheep. So it kind of makes a big difference. Ignorance is a real problem. And if we don't know how we can feed others and what we are to feed them, then we don't do a very great job of doing that. So today I'd like to spend a few moments with you going over this understanding and trying to explain in a very short time here how we can feed others and what is it that we are really called to feed others. So the first point that I would want to make today is this, and that is, in order to be able to feed sheep, if we're going to know how we can feed sheep, the first thing that has to happen is we have to let God humble us. A prideful person, an egotistical person, a self-centered person, a self-righteous person, they can't do good for anybody because they're all interested in themselves and what they're going to get and how they're going to get it and what it's all about. So they can't be good shepherds. Only the humbled can be good shepherds. It was a funny thing that happened many years ago. I was listening to an evangelist. We had a big revival, and we had brought in this guy from Florida, I think he was at the time, and he was preaching a revival for our church, and it was going quite well, and he was a great speaker, really, and he was doing a really tremendous job, and he had a big booming voice, and it was a really great experience for many of the folks that came there. And he got into this subject about being humbled before God, and he was talking about how important that was, and that we needed to surrender, and that we needed to let God take us and use us the way God wanted us to. And he got very excited. He evidently was filled with the Spirit, and he was just going on and on. And at the key point in the sermon that evening, he got to this place where he wanted to say, "You must be humbled by God." And you just knew that's exactly what he was going to say. But somehow the Spirit changed him, and he said, "You must be hammered by God." And we all kind of heard that. And he wanted to stop and say, no, I meant that, we have to be humbled by God. But then the Spirit broke through and he said, that's actually right. We need to be hammered by God. That's what we need. And of course, nobody likes to hear about being hammered by God. But the point is true. It's through the sufferings of our life, the difficulties, the things that break our pride, that crush our ego, that show us the results of our selfishness. These are the things that make our heart fertile ground for the Lord's Spirit to work with others. If we go through those kinds of experiences and understand that the purpose of them is to make us more like the heart of Jesus, I mean, Jesus had been hammered a lot. His friends left him. They betrayed him. He gets crucified. All of that. And that's how he was able to minister, because his spirit had been broken by God and replaced by the Christ Spirit. And so therefore, this is the thing that we must first consider before we even think about feeding others. We must first consider how the experiences, the circumstances, and the situations of our life have brought into us these experiences that humble us and break us down from the prideful human beings that we find ourselves to be. You know, life is suffering, and there's a lot of bad things to happen all the time to good people. But the Christian view has been that it is through these things that God makes our heart more open to the sufferings and the miseries of others. If you've never really suffered, if you've never really hurt, if you've never really been wounded, what can you do for someone who suffers and who's hurt and who's wounded? What can you do for them? Not much. But if you have suffered, and if you have been wounded, and you have been hurt, and you have had the Spirit of God heal you, help you, move you along, get you on down the road, help you to understand the purposes of that in your life, then, my friends, you're ready to be a shepherd. You're ready to help those in this world who are currently suffering in all kinds of possible ways. So the first most important thing then, I think we have to realize today, is that maybe one of the reasons why our churches, our communities have not really gotten excited about feeding others is because we have not understood the purpose of suffering in our own life. We have not understood why these things have happened to us. And we don't go all the way with them and finally understand that, yes, these horrible things have happened. And yes, I have been hurt. And yes, I have been filled with sorrow. But it is for a purpose, to make my heart more like the heart of Christ. And that's what we need to realize. And I think if we realize that, then we will become better and better shepherds as time goes on. Some of us have lived a while, and some of us have lived a long while. And the longer you live, the more these sufferings come upon you. You know, when you're young and you're just starting out in life, you have sufferings, but you don't really realize how those sufferings are going to continue on and on and on as life goes on. So we would say to everyone, be prepared. Life is filled with these sufferings, but it only is God making you humble shepherds of others. That's what it is. And that's the ultimate purpose of why we're here. Because if we don't understand that, then our societies crumble, our civilizations fall, the world turns into hellacious darkness. It happens every time, over and over and over again throughout human history. So it's time to wake up and actually pray for God to humble us. And to pray that through the hammering experiences of life, we can understand that it is only so we can become better shepherds of others. We look at the experience of Peter that we heard here. You know, here is Jesus, the risen one, reinstating Peter to his role as a great leader in the Christian faith after Peter has already denied him 3 times and shown what a hypocrite he is. Yeah, that softened the heart of Peter, and he was much more able to help others as well. So that's the first point that I would share with you today. If we're going to feed others, God needs to make us ready to help. No judgment, no condemnation, just love. That's what we're looking for. Now, the second thought is one that says we must get to that point where we are ready to give people what they want. It's hard for us to think about that because we always have in our mind what we think they want, but we don't pay attention to what they really want. And so we don't really feed them what they really want. We don't really give to them what they want. We're giving to them what we think that they want. We need to stop, erase the chalkboard, and think about what is it that people really want. Recently I was reading again the story of the two brothers that founded the McDonald's hamburger chain. Maurice and Dick McDonald, two brothers from New England is where they were born. And they had watched their father die in poverty. He had worked for a company for 40 years, and then he was laid off with no pension, no hope, and they had seen him just wither away, and their family almost starved to death. So they said to themselves, we're not going to let that happen to us. We're going to make some money, and we're going to figure out some way to survive in this world. So as it comes to pass, the story goes on, they joined together, the two brothers, and they moved out to California because that was a place at the time where a lot of people were making a lot of money. And so they went out there to think that they could make some money. And their idea was to start a movie company. They were going to make movies. They had no experience making movies, had no idea how to make movies. But they tried, and they thought they could make a lot of money. Well, you know what happened is they failed miserably and lost most of their savings. And it was a very bad experience for them. And so they didn't know what they were going to do next. But they were sitting at some place eating a hamburger. And the brother turned to the other brother and said, "This is a horrible hamburger." And, you know, what the other brother said to the other one, he said, "Well, what the world needs is a better hamburger." And so they decided that they would open a restaurant. And so they opened a restaurant, and in all their planning, they wanted to figure out in their mind what they thought people needed. And they said, well, what people really need is an extensive menu. They want to have a lot of choices. So they created this restaurant that had 25 different things you could choose from: hot dogs, fried chicken, shrimp, all kinds of stuff. And they were just about to go broke because people weren't buying all this stuff. And in addition to that, in those days you had to drive in, and you had to drive in with your car, and in a car hop there was a person who would come out to your car and take your order. And you imagine how times have changed. And then they would bring the order to your car, and you could sit there and eat it in your car. And that was costing them a lot of money to pay for all the car hops to go out there and do this. And so they realized they were going to go under again, that they could not continue to maintain that kind of a restaurant. It was called McDonald's Barbecue, because that was their big thing, was the barbecue. We're going to drink this. Nobody was buying the barbecue. And they got to looking at it, and they added it all up, and they said, you know, the only thing people are buying is hamburgers and french fries. That's the only thing. And they just couldn't understand it, because their barbecue was good, their fried chicken was good. Why are people just buying hamburgers and french fries? That's all they're buying. And then it was Dick who turned to Maurice and said, you know, I have a novel idea. And Maurice said, what is your novel idea? And he says, you know, we ought to give people what they want. We ought to give people what they want. If they want quick, hot hamburgers and french fries, and that's all they want, then that's what we're going to give them. And we're going to do the best job of it anybody ever did. So they canceled the menu, they fired all the car hops, because they said, you know, if we're going to do this, we got to do it really lean and mean, and that means they got to get out of their car and come in and make the order. And for a while, people didn't do that, but when they realized how quick the hamburger came out and how wonderful the french fries were, they did that. They would actually get out of their car and come into the restaurant and make the order. And it was working wonderfully for them. And the hamburgers were getting more and more popular, especially once Dick had the idea. He said, you know, what we need is a secret sauce on this hamburger. And he said, well, that sounds good. What are you going to put in it? And he said, we're going to put sugar in it, because America loves sugar. And then he said, you know, our french fries taste like everybody else's french fries. They're nothing but french fries. What are we going to do to make them better? And Maurice came up with the idea, we need to soak them in beef fat first. And that was the secret that only just recently came out. Two months ago it came out that was what McDonald's does. It makes their french fries so much better, is they soak them in beef fat before they fry. But anyway, make a long story short, you know what happened to McDonald's, and you know the story, and you know what it has become now. But the point is, it all began because someone had this novel idea that we really ought to give people what they want. You know, wouldn't it be good if politicians could do that? If government officials could do that? If the churches could do that? You know, we just need to go back and focus on giving people what it is they want. And that's where being a shepherd comes in. Is once you learn what people want, then you need to learn how to give people what it is they want. And you know, there's three things that I think people want spiritually. And it's no big secret. You can learn it in a minute what the three things are that everybody in this world wants, but they can't seem to find it. They can't seem to find anyone who can give it to them. We as shepherds could do that if we only paid attention to it. It's not that complex. It's like it's just a hamburger and fries. It's just three things. And what it is faith, hope, and love. These are the three things. And the greatest one of them is love. You see, it's not hard to figure this out. This is what we need to share with others. But, you know, it's a kind of a faith that's not just a faith in a dogma or a belief in a book that they can write down. It's a faith in a God that loves them. It's a faith that life is for them and not against them. It's an encouraging faith. It's a faith that says to people, I don't care how hard your troubles are. I don't care how difficult your life is. I don't care about any of that. I want to share with you the fact that there is a God that loves you and that will see you through whatever darkness it is that you happen to go through. And I want to share that faith with you so you can trust God that way. We need to just give people the faith that we have, the faith that's enabled us to get through some of the darkest times that we've ever gotten through. We just need to help people understand that they can trust God. And likewise, we need to be able to give them hope, an eternal hope, a hope that says to them, it may be bad now, but it is going to get much better. It's like that great sermon I heard on Good Friday, preached by an African American in a church. I never will forget that sermon. He stood up on Good Friday and he said to the congregation, brothers and sisters, it's Friday all right. The Lord's being crucified everywhere. But Sunday's coming. It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. You see, that's the eternal hope that we need to give to one another here and to anyone that would listen to us. Because that's what people want. They want to know that despite all their troubles, miseries, difficulties, chaos, and whatever else they're going through, that there's some reason to hope for a better day to come. You see, we can do that. It's not that hard. It's not that difficult to say to people. We can hope that God is going to bring us a better day. We can do that for people. We can give them a faith, and we can give them a hope, and most of all, we can give them this love that accepts them as they are, where they are, when they are. It doesn't say to them, well, you've got to clean up your act for we'll love you. No, it doesn't say that at all. It says we'll love you. You know, our sandwich ministry that we have is growing rapidly, and we're continuing to share with that and to help out financially. I think we're up to 1,300 sandwiches a week going out at the Parque Calderon. And someone the other day was bringing up this idea that they didn't like that ministry because we were just giving out those sandwiches indiscriminately. It was like we really didn't care who the person was. We were just giving these sandwiches to them because they were hungry. I can't think of a better reason to give somebody a sandwich. That's why we do it. God's love shows no discrimination. God's love doesn't say, well, let me see if you deserve this love. Let me check you out. No, that's not the kind of love we give people. We give people this love that says we don't care who you are, what you've done, what you've been about, what you think, what you believe. Don't make us any difference. We're here to love you and help you in whatever way we can. We can do that. We can give that to people in the world. We can give them this uplifting faith. We can give them this eternal hope. We can give them this unconditional love, we can do that. It's not that hard. It's just hamburgers and french fries. That's all it is. But we need to remember, that's what we're here to do. Give people what it is they want. And that's what they want. They want to see a church. They want to see a community where the people there have a faith and they have a hope and they have a love. And they want to know how that happens and they want to be a part of that. And that's evangelism, you see. Well, the final thought I would share with you today is not only do we need to give people what they want, but we also need to give people what they need. You see, there's a difference between what we would want and what we need. Many of us are very much aware of what it is we want. We can make sure we understand that. But it's very vague sometimes what it is we really need. And so, as the Christian community, we have to think about two ways to feed the sheep. One is to help them find what they want, the faith, the hope, and the love. And the other thing is to help them find what it is they need. And that is the important point that we need to remember in the third section here. And that point is illustrated by an experience that I had. Most of you know that I played football when I was in high school, and I enjoyed it much until I ended up getting injured very badly and almost broke my back, but I survived and carried that injury with me all of my life now. But the point is that once I was injured, I couldn't play football anymore. And in our high school, you had to have an extracurricular activity. And at that time, I didn't have anything else I could do. Football was all that I knew. And so the coach came and helped me out. He said, well, you can't play for us anymore. We know that. But for next season, you can be the water boy. And that way you can meet your extracurricular activity requirement. And so I became, for one season there, in charge of taking the water out to the players when there was a timeout and we needed to find a refreshment for them in that situation. And so I did that. And at first I was a little down about it because it was hard not to play, but I knew I couldn't because I was really almost crippled at that time. But it became obvious to me as I was doing that I found inside myself something that was more than just running out there with, or crippling out there with water and these jugs to give to the players that were fighting the game and trying to win. I discovered within myself that I had a unique kind of an ability to encourage people. I never knew that about myself. And that experience as the water boy helped me to understand that maybe someday I might be into something that would help encourage people. And what I discovered was that every time I would go out, these guys were just totally worn out. I know what it feels like. I played football. I understand how tired and worn out and just you're thirsty and you're burning up with sweat and everything, and to have that cold water is such a wonderful relief at that moment. But at that time, when I would go out there to bring the relief to them, I started to think about ways to encourage them. Come on, guys, let's do it. You can win this game. You can be, we can be victorious. And it was funny. I remember one time I went out and we were behind 21-0, and it was the third quarter. But somehow I went out there and I said to them, and some of them say even to me in the years past that they still remember my little speech. I said, boys, we got them right where we want them. Now, if that's not encouraging, I don't know what. But I got called into this ministry where now that's what we're saying to the world. The score may be 21-0, but we got it just where we want this score. We're going to overcome it. We're going to overcome it with faith, hope, and love. But I'm telling you that this is the other thing that people really need. They may want faith, and they may want hope, and they may want love, and that's fine, and we need to give that to them. But it's like McDonald's discovered a little bit later. They also want a milkshake. They didn't used to serve milkshakes with hot hamburgers, but they started that in McDonald's. And so the milkshake is this encouragement. That's what we really, really need to give to people, because nobody's giving them encouragement. Nobody's giving anyone encouragement these days. They're all looking at each other with judgment. Do you believe like I believe? Are you a part of what I'm a part of? Nobody's encouraging anybody to grow and be who God wants them to be. And this is the greatest food we can feed any sheep anywhere, is words of encouragement. Think how you can encourage your neighbor, your friends, your relatives, anybody you might know. Be a beacon of encouragement to others. This is what they really need. This is what they hope for. And this is what they want to have faith in. And this is the kind of love they look for. It's an encouraging love. I remember in Houston, I was a pastor there, and someone opened a church that just blew up. I mean, it was just huge. All of a sudden, overnight, they opened it. They had 15 members to start, and the next day they had 100, and it just kept growing and growing. And you know what they named that church? The Encourager. That was the name of that church, and their whole ministry was encouraging people to be who God wants them to be. So I'm just saying to you that this is the way we can do evangelism, is by learning what it is we need to feed the sheep. We need to feed the sheep what they want, which is the faith and the hope and the love. And we need to feed them what they need, which is encouragement. If we do that as a community, then we will be doing what Jesus asked us to do, and that is to feed my sheep. Well, a little final story about my life and some of the ways I had been changed. When I first got into the ministry, and I was an associate pastor and still learning a lot of things, I had the great fortune of being able to go and spend 6 months as an intern at a church in Houston that was growing rapidly. It was called the Oasis of Love, and it was founded by John Osteen. And it was an amazing place to be and an amazing place to go. And I was able to go there as an assistant and help and do whatever I could to learn from the Osteens. It was a husband and wife ministry, John Osteen and his wife Dodie. And I learned so much in that 6 months about the effect of a community that reaches out to people and gives them what they want, the faith, the hope, and the love, and encourages them. And it's on that point of giving people these things that I wanted to share with you an experience I had. And that was one of the duties I had, was to go and get the sanctuary ready at 6 o'clock in the morning, which was not one of my favorite times to be up, but I had to go get it ready for the wife, who was Dodie, and she had a prayer ministry. She began at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she would sit there in a little chair at the very up front of the sanctuary, and they had it set up with some barriers and things around it, so it looked like a little chapel in there, and that's what I did to help set up. And then they invited anybody in the community who needed prayer. Anybody. Didn't make any difference, a member of Oasis of Love, or not even a Christian believer. It didn't make any difference who they were. It just said, come on in. If you need a cup of coffee and a donut and a prayer, come on in. And at first there's only 2 or 3 people show up. But eventually, over the time I was there, I saw those crowds grow. One after another of these people would come from the community all around. It was a poor community, yes, and there were a lot of people, no jobs, no hope, no nothing. But they would come. All kinds of sicknesses, all kinds of illnesses, all kinds of financial problems, marital problems. I don't care whatever kind of problem you want to talk about. They would come to Dodie, that was her name, Dodie, and she would pray over them. Everybody got a prayer and a cup of coffee and a donut if they'd like it. And eventually that line went out to church and around the block, and it was amazing to me to see that. And I had an opportunity to talk to 1 or 2 of those people and find out what was the attraction. What was the attraction? And one of them said to me, and I shall never forget how she put it, she said, well, when I goes there and Miss Dottie, she prays for me, I know that God is in charge of everything and all the world's going to be okay. This is what it means to feed my sheep. So we really need to do a better job here at ICC. We do a good job of feeding people physically. We try to help out with our sandwich ministries, and that's an encouragement to the poor people out there that had no lunch that day or no lunch for 2 or 3 days. What an encouragement a sandwich and a banana is. And through the organization of the Cuenca Soup Kitchen, to be able to deliver groceries to these people that have lost their houses out in the area where the river's flooded and the mountains have come down on top of them. That's an encouragement, and we're doing a great job there. And to go out to OSO, to the orphanage where we help all those disabled children who are got all kinds of cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, whatever it is they got, and we, through our volunteers and our funds, we help give them encouragement. That's encouragement. We're doing these kinds of things throughout all the different ministries that we are engaged in. Crea tu Espacio, and helping the migrants understand that somebody here in this town loves them and wants their kids to go to school. We are encouraging financially the needs of others, and that's great. But it's time to wake up and understand that there's more to feeding sheep than just giving the money that needs to help them get along. We need to also let them know this is a place. Here's a place. It's a sanctuary. We don't call this a sanctuary by accident. It's a sanctuary because it means it's a place to get away from the world and get out of that world and come and hear the truth about what is actually going on in the world, and to come here and to feel and to understand the faith that we offer, the hope that we offer, the love that we offer, the encouragement that we offer, and to show it among ourselves and show it to them through our acts as well. This is what we need to focus more on, and I think in the months ahead, that's what we shall do. Let us receive now our benediction. Go forth into this world and know that you are a shepherd of the sheep, and that Christ can give you the power and the strength and the love to feed his sheep. Amen.